Assalamu alaikum. Welcome again. So we will continue talking about generalization and how we are going to use generalization in writing. So we here focusing on many types. We talk about last lecture about how we are going to like use all, for example, if we use all men are mortal, for example, and this is like acceptable. But when we say all men like work or sorry, can't find a job, so it's like we can't generalize because some men like may find a job or another like yes may not, so we don't like generalize. So there's some cases we can't generalize. Even chocolate, for example, is good or chocolate is bad, so we can't say it because it's like has a pros and cons, like has a positive and negative at the same time, so we can't really say that this is like a generalized. So التعميم ما ممكن يكون على كل الأشياء يعني بس في أشياء مخصصة. So we today gonna talk about also many types of details like definition, descriptions, classification, amplification. So must follow the generalization writing. يعني هلا إذا حدا حكى لك مثلا describe a story that you come through uh, sorry that you, for example, come through your life, or a problem that you try to dissolve to solve it, or you encounter in your life. Describe a situation that you live now under war, for example. So you're going to use generalization, classification, تصنيف, or you're going to define a definition. For example, if we're going to define audiovisual translation, or if we're going to for education, for example, blended learning. So the specific details must follow if the generalization is to be valid and maintain the reader intention. You can do this by reasoning backup data. So when you back up, it means that you support your data, you support your interpretation. هلا data فين بقولوا data or data, so sometimes it's like pronounced data because it's preferable to pronounce like this. So interpretation of diagrams, charts, statistics. So all of these like you can do this by reasoning. يعني هلا اذا احنا مثلا ليش انا يعني الاشياء هي مهمه كتير، لانه مثلا بتعمل ايلتس او بتعمل اختبار الاكسفورد، بطلبوا منك انك مثلا um, support your evidence, support you give if more evidence خاصة بالwriting. So بتذكر اني مرة امتحنت الاكسفورد طلبوا مني مثلا عن الكالتشر، يعني experience a new culture, how you're going to experience a new culture, and is there any positive or negative when you travel abroad. ففي مثلا هون يعني بدأت إني أنا supporting my reasoning. يعني هلأ بحاول إني أدعم يعني قد ما أقدر إنه أدعم my reason. For example, traveling abroad, for example, may enhance our experience to see more people, to encounter different variety of cultures. لكن on the other hand may like also uh, may also cause what we can call it clashes in culture. فبتسبب يعني clashes in culture because you have for example, I have Arabic culture, especially Palestinian one. When I travel, I felt like and the first thing that is like sometimes you can't adapt yourself with the different, but by the time you start to um, like what we can say, engage into the culture, but you also preserve your own culture at the same time, your identity as a Palestinian, as a Muslim, like this. So يعني انه بتحاول انه تحافظ على يعني الريزنينج توصل لل for example سبحان الله هي بيحكي إنه expression such as for instance for example. هلا إنه لما الواحد بيحكي يعني شوف أنا كنت حكيت لكن لما دعمت نفسي في reason أو في for example as I am Palestinian وبدأت أحكي فإنه بتلاحظ إنه أكتر يعني you engage the people to your story لأنه الناس بيحبوا يسمعوا عن إنك أنت how you're going to show your identity as a Palestinians, as a Muslims, like that. So, is are useful and living in living your writing خلي تضيف حياة. So they introduce some specific details, amplifying your generalization to following. I can say, for example, no, I'm traveling is, for example, harmful or traveling abroad. For example, causes many problem. No, we can't say this is generalization because some people may get benefit, may make use of life in traveling from country to another country. So they have, this is the variety of culture. So you can't generalize, but you may like use it for example and showing your identity. This is the following is that it's of some structures and vocabulary you need when you support your generalization with the specific details. For example, we say, for example, for instance لأنه هلا إذا بستخدم for instance بتعطي أكتر يعني more sophisticated than using for example إنه نفس المعنى تبع for example. فأنا حتى في الامتحان ممكن أسألكم إنه for example is the same meaning of for instance. Yes, true. For one thing, to illustrate in one instance, in other words, as follows, as a proof, let me illustrate. let me cite proof يعني خليني إنه أعرض لك البرهان أو السبب. in substantiate, for example, in substantiate, as an illustration, as an example, take, for example, consider, for example, and very say, consider traveling abroad. For example, I had experience, for example, travel to like a Europe country and like this in a practice according to statistic. For example, يعني وحسب النتائج التي عرضت وحسب كذا. So they're giving more evidences of giving your strengths to writing according to statistic evidence. So this is like statistic evidence. You say according to the statistic, the latest statistic about smoking is that it's banned in some areas, like this. So you started to using this. These are really very important to use it in your writing. And look at this. Some people believe happiness means having money and doing what they like. It's good. When say some people, it's you are not generalized. You specify those people. Other feelings, habits, lies in religious belief or intelligence or health. For the writer, happiness is related to harmonious يعني harmony of family life, family bond يعني الروابط الاجتماعية تبعت الأهل. So happiness is different from one to another. So I may like say, my happiness, like, okay, I see happiness is related to reading books, for example. Uh, it's feeling like, you are different from others. So you can't say happiness means money. No. And these like, okay, this is like, more examples, more drills. It's not, okay, we're not gonna focus on it, but just like the term generalization, just this. So the most common weakness of the student's writing is an over dependence on generalization. So معظم الطلاب بيستخدموا generalization. This is like, also you fail because you can't really generalize in your life because we have a different point of view. So, as we have seen above, merely stating a generalization or assumption is not enough. So, it's important that you illustrate and support your generalizations with specific information. So, من المهم إنك أنت illustrate and support your generalization with specific information. يعني لو قلت له according to the statistic most men like this, all men like this. إذا حكيت حتى all عملت انه according to statistic وحسب ما افادت اخر مثلا الاحصائيات ان الجميع الرجال كذا كذا. So it means that you depend on something, you depend on the proof. So if you do not collect sufficient evidence إذا ما كان عندك أشياء يعني كافية, or if you assume that because one incident happens once or twice, that incident or event will always happen, then your generalization will be poor, as it was said early in this section. So avoid making sweeping generalization. يعني أنا ممكن في الامتحان أسألك sweeping generalization. We avoid sweeping generalization in writing, yes. So finally, in this section, you should avoid including irrelevant data or information or as a supportive material. So in a good paragraph or a composition of a generalization, all the material should be support the generalization. So here are also examples of a sweeping generalization. People who play sport always get hard. No, they we can't say that يعني انه كل بيلعبوا رياضة مثلا hurt. No, national parks are always crowded during the summer months. Learning a second language is always difficult. Driving cars is always fun, is always fun. Not always, not with this idea. Learning second language is always difficult, not always hard, because you may find it's enjoyable, it's easy, so it's different. لما تلاقي حالك is different from one to another, it means that it's a sweeping generalization. So sweeping the generalization itself is has negativity. So making qualifications. So far we have examined how to make generalization and how to support them by specific points of details. In this part, we are going to examine how the generalization can be made more precise by qualifying them and expressing reservation. So in other words, we want to show that the generalization we make are not necessarily entirely good or right, or absolutely true or absolutely false. Suppose you write a criticism of university courses. يعني هلا لو احنا بدنا ناخد for example بنعمل نقد على المواد الجامعية, you begin with a sweeping generalization. University courses are very difficult, so you may start with this criticism. So here the generalization is obvious, but it's not obvious how or to whom university courses are difficult. So to make your generalization acceptable, you should qualify your statement by adding a word, phrase, or sentence to show that what you say is not necessarily absolute. So the following are examples. For example, some university courses are difficult, or in some cases, university courses are difficult. Although new students are pleased to join the university, they find their courses rather difficult. So you by these examples you feel that you can't generalize. Okay, by adding some, you feel like this is you know more convince or يعني أكتر إقناعا. So many students like to go to university, however some of the courses are difficult. So you feel writing تبعك بحاول إنه your writing is enhancing. So here you can, for example, you write the suitable qualification you make. For example, men work harder than women. Okay. But in some cases, women also are work harder than men. The Arab are more generous than other people, but you may face, for example, some Arab people are not they are not generous. So you can't say this is it's not a this is a not generalization. Okay. And this is continued like this. So we have a scale of the qualification. So 100% all, ever, always, certainly, will. But we may say zero, for example, will not, is cannot, not. هلا إذا لاحظتوا إنه هون مثلا نستخدم always, frequency, always, usually, normally, generally, regularly, often, frequently, sometimes, occasionally, rarely, seldom, hardly ever, scarcely ever, never. probability يعني في probability يعني احتمالية certainly, definitely, undoubtedly, probably, likely, perhaps, possible, maybe, yeah, unlikely. So like this is like showing how the person is using here. So quantity, all, frequency, usually, probability, likely. So this is like a general about all of these like information about generalization. So generalization, we use generalization when we يعني when we going to use it in a way that you based on something, you depend on the statistic analysis, based on your experience as example. يعني استخدموها بس استخدموها بشكل صحيح. So concluding points. Here we have generalization qualification can occur at sentence and the discourse levels. So they can take place on their own as a show by the examples and exercises you have been exposed to. The unity model generalization and the qualification can also be used in writing in conjunction with other language functions as definition, comparison, contrast, cause, effect, argument. كل هدول الأشياء اللي حكيناهم ممكن إحنا نستخدمهم في generalization. So this is in general about this chapter. I think it's okay enough that we are going to use. Even here, frequency we use usually recent, some more than two. Again, يعني إنه مثلا لو حكينا إنه likely is used in a probability to show, for example, to use in generalization or something like that. All is used in generalization. Yes, true. So all of these information يعني خد الأشياء المهمة اللي مكتوبة بالبوكس زي ما إحنا درسناها. Okay. Thank you so much. And if you have any question, don't hesitate to ask me. مع السلامة، في أمان الله.